All right, let's do this. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. So happy to have you here. Today, we're talking about dissociation. Whoa, what a big theme. This whole month, we're talking about befriending your dissociation. Not just understanding it, not just accepting it, but actually befriending it as a very important and powerful branch, tool, mechanism of your nervous system. So before we get into it, I want to remind you, on this podcast, we're talking about things related to trauma. It is absolutely normal and expected for certain things to bring up experiences in your body. At any point, if you feel overwhelmed or like you're interacting with something that you just don't want to interact with at the moment, just pause the episode, get yourself a drink of water, do something else, and come back when you're feeling ready. We're going to be learning our best when we feel safe to do so. Another note I would like to make. In this episode, we're talking about dissociation as an everyday nervous system-based experiences that many trauma survivors experience regularly. Maybe even, everyone experiences dissociation, but when we're talking about trauma survivors, we're talking about experiences with this dissociation that may come a little bit more often or perhaps a little bit deeper on the scale, which we'll be talking about, than people who do not have quite the same trauma history. Things like zoning out, emotional numbness, bodily numbness, feeling disconnected from reality. The important note here, we are not talking about dissociative disorders like dissociative identity disorders or other complex clinical conditions. Those are very real, very valid experiences that deserve specialized care. And that's outside of the scope of today's conversation. So if your dissociation feels extreme, like you're regularly losing large chunks of time, hearing voices, switching between different identities without control or awareness, it's a really good idea to speak with a licensed psychologist or a mental health professional who understands trauma and dissociation, because you deserve support that's attuned to your experience. So let's get into it. First, let's just talk about what dissociation even is. As a really simple definition, we can say that dissociation is a part of your nervous system that decides that checking out is safer than staying present. And dissociation lives on a continuum, like all the parts of our nervous systems. As these beautifully complex, intuitive creatures, all of our experience can really be as part of this spectrum of experience. So when we talk about dissociation, we're including things like daydreaming, scrolling, numbing out on the television, going blank during a conflict, losing time. But first, it's not always trauma-induced. A lot of these things are just things that we do, whether they're related to our trauma history or not, and they're not always dramatic. Dissociation can be everything on one end, which is like, whoa, I just spaced out for a sec. Sorry, what were we talking about? In a friendly conversation, to, I haven't moved out of my bed for 3 days. I can't feel my body or my hunger. And everything in between. There are different kinds of dissociation, and we're going to very loosely and at a very high level go over a few different ways that we can categorize it. The first one is what's called depersonalization. So this is being disconnected from your body or your sense of self. So as a metaphor, it's like you're watching your life through a surveillance camera. It's like you're there, but you're not in it. You're in a conversation and you're smiling, you're nodding, you're responding, but you're almost on autopilot. Inside, you might feel floaty or distant, or like you're watching a version of yourself perform. Perhaps a good example would be feeling like you're playing a point of view video game where it's like, yeah, I'm participating in this video game, but like obviously the POV, first person point of view, it isn't me. These aren't my eyes. It's not embodied. I'm not actually here. The other side of that is what we'll call derealization, where you feel like the world around you isn't real. Almost like someone put a filter, like a hazy filter over reality. Everything looks muted or far away or dreamlike. It's like maybe you walk into a grocery store and none of the colors really stand out. None of the aisles really stand out. None of the sounds really stand out. Everything's kind of muffled. It feels like you're in a movie scene instead of real life. The next category we could consider for dissociation is one that I think if you're listening to this podcast, I would dare say you're quite familiar with, and that's emotional numbing. You feel blank or shut down. I really like the word blank or quiet. If you imagine you have an emotional volume, it's like it's been turned down. Or for some of us, maybe you've even just hit mute on it. So maybe a friend comes up to you and they tell you something really sad or really exciting. And in your mind, you know how you're, quote, supposed to feel when they tell you this thing, but really nothing just comes up. You just feel kind of blank. When I think of emotional numbing, this is one that's really relatable for me because there would be times in the past when I would be sharing a story with someone, perhaps one of the most horrific experiences of my life to my therapist or a close confidant. And I could see in their face the way I was supposed to be feeling about it. I'd be sharing this experience of violence or tragedy, and I would see the tears filling their eyes, their posture moving towards me as if to comfort me, or shock in their face. And it would be distressing for me because I wouldn't have any emotion at all. I might as well have been reading the paper to them. And this can also come in on the upside, where something incredible happened to you and you just don't feel it. And this is very often coupled with that experience of shame that I described in myself. What's wrong with me? I should be really happy right now. Why aren't I happy for that person? Oh, it must be because I'm a shitty friend or I'm a bad person. The next dissociative experience would be time loss or gaps in your memory. You can be losing track of time or having chunks of your memory missing. This is like skipping scenes in a movie. You're watching and then suddenly you're like, whoa, what just happened? Where am I? You're driving and you realize you don't remember making those last 5 turns. Boom, you're home. Or you get to the bottom of the bag of the potato chips and you're like, whoa, I don't remember eating this entire bag. This can also be that gaps in your memory. This is also something that's widely universal for many childhood trauma survivors, where you kind of blank out on. Someone will ask you, oh yeah, what'd you do when you were this age? Or do you remember this key part of your childhood? And you're like, I actually don't remember that. I actually don't really remember living in that house. Like, I know I lived there, but I can't tell you what I did, where I played in that house. I just know like I lived there, but I don't really have a time-stamped memory of this place or this time in my life. And then finally, we have some identity confusion or shifts. So feeling unsure of who you are, or maybe even flipping between different versions of yourself. Around certain people, you're really loud and confident, and around others, you shrink and you can't really find your words, and later you wonder, which is the real me? This can also feel like your inner critic taking over you, where it's all I can hear is this inner voice that tells me I suck. Or on the other side, the part of your brain that's really jazzing you up. Yeah, you can take over the world. None of these things are bad things. None of these things are odd. These are things that all of us experience on that spectrum in some way or another. None of these things are inherently a problem. A lot of times we layer shame over dissociation. When you take something as natural as dissociation, it's literally a part of our nervous system. We have a branch of our nervous system. We share it with our animal cousins, even all the way down to our lizard companions and our fish companions. The oldest organisms on this earth, animal organisms on this earth, have this branch of their nervous system that gives them space from stress. So when you have something as natural, built-in, organic as dissociation, and you make it a moral failing, that causes an immense amount of distress in us. It prevents so much integration. It disrupts our healing process. We can't actually come to ourselves if there is a part of ourselves that we believe shouldn't belong there. One of the ways this becomes stigmatized is by this idea that being present is a moral imperative. We live in a culture that practically worships productivity, clarity, high performance, flow state. And as we just mentioned, dissociation is spacing out, going blank, not being on. When we have this dichotomy of good is being present and performing highly, then bad becomes dissociation. We're praised for pushing through, focusing harder, staying in the moment, even when our bodies are screaming for space or for pauses. It's not just misunderstood, it's often punished. What if dissociation isn't a failure, but feedback? A message from your nervous system that something is too much, too fast, or too soon. That is built into you for a reason. And that pushes against our cultural insanity for production, for productivity. We have an entire part of our economy built to trample on dissociation. Supplements, adaptogens, nootropics, workout programs, mind shifts, thought belief, coaching, all intended to get a review back from their customers that says, wow, I feel like I'm on all the time now, when that's not actually how we're built to function. There's also a surprising place of our culture that has a significant heavy hand in dissociation shaming, and that's actually the healing space. There is actually a really heavy-handed embodiment agenda. Now, I believe that this comes from a good place, knowing that I myself have participated this many times in the past. In many trauma-informed spaces, we talk a ton about coming back into the body, which is gorgeous and beautiful and healing, but sometimes shaming. The unspoken message of modalities that do not have space for dissociation, and I'm going to clarify that a little bit. The unspoken message is you're actually only healing when you're embodied. You're only doing this right when you feel grounded and present and aware. And in that context, dissociation becomes the thing to fix or the thing to get rid of instead of the thing that I need. There's often pressure to hurry up and get out of dissociation. And that is an important distinction to make. Because yes, oftentimes when we're going through trauma recovery, dissociation can be so suppressed that it is only expressed in very distressing ways. I feel frozen, I feel shut down, I feel scared, I feel alone. I feel like the only person in the world, that I don't belong here. All of these sentiments, they are very difficult to feel, and they're all dissociative. And in all this love and good intentions, a facilitator may come up to you and be like, well, let's get you out of there. Let's get you out of there. You don't like being there. I don't like you suffering. Hurry, let's get you embodied. When there is actually wisdom at the root of that experience. And being with someone in that experience allows them to integrate that wisdom and slowly thaw out from the experience. When we slowly come out of dissociation, while honoring the experience of dissociation, it comes out of the shadow. It doesn't need to slam us down so hard. We're going to talk about that more over the next coming podcasts. what that looks like, how we can practice that, and so on and so forth. But there really isn't a lot of that in the current healing space and contemporary somatic healing work. It's more often, ooh, we want to make that stop. Not very helpful. And these stigmas really hurt. In the quiet parts of your evening, it leaves you with this belief, whether we're aware of it or not, that I'm actually doing the healing wrong. I must be doing this wrong because I can't seem to stay present all day. I still feel myself shutting down. So there must be something wrong with me. It creates so much urgency to get back in the body before your body has become a safe place. And it really overlooks the brilliance of how someone survived by spacing out, by numbing or disconnected. I work very primarily with childhood trauma survivors. And when we look at a child's experience, one of the most disempowered groups of people are children. They don't really have all that much autonomy. They don't have a lot of freedom or power or choice. That's just how it goes. It's for their own safety, of course. But because of that, dissociation often becomes their only protective tool. When our home is chaotic or unsafe, zoning out becomes the only option for protection. Scrolling through TV or disappearing into video games becomes the only safe option when you have no other option as a child. And if you can imagine a child who is consistently under stress, who consistently registers threat in their surroundings, dissociation becomes a very strong protective pattern. So this month, we're really going to befriend this so that the dissociation can come out of the shadow, can do the beautiful work it is trying to do, can offer us the wisdom that we need for healing, for space, for safety and protection, so that it doesn't need to overwhelm us. If you're part of the free online healing program, next week we'll be doing a sound healing journey where we're actually going to interact with dissociation on purpose, intentionally. We're going to feel ourselves, allow ourselves into this kind of out-of-body, floaty experience, knowing what we're doing and finding an intention for doing it, and then slowly and safely coming back into our bodies. And the other podcast episodes are going to give you some tools, some education on how you can begin to befriend this part of you. What if you're not broken? What if this beautiful part of your nervous system is brilliant and it just needs a little love and a little help finding its way home?